The Man with the Scar. Chapter 1. The Balcony. The storm had been building since noon, but by the time dusk settled over the town it had grown into something feral. Rain hammered the rooftops with a fury that felt almost personal, turning gutters into rushing streams and street lamps into pale, flickering ghosts barely visible through the downpour. Elena Vescari stood on her balcony as if the wind itself had summoned her. It pulled at her hair, wrapped her in damp air, and whispered its cold breath across the back of her neck. The street below quivered under sheets of water, everything blurred, smeared, half-dissolved, a place between worlds. She gripped the iron railing, welcoming the chill that seeped into her palms. She liked storms. Always had. They gave shape to the things inside her. The restless, shifting fragments she could never name. In storms, nothing stayed still. Nothing stayed solid. Even memories could be washed clean. Thunder cracked the sky apart. She didn't flinch. She hadn't flinched at thunder in years. Lightning, yes. Silence, always. But thunder was easy, it shouted the truth. Silence whispered lies. Elena. She didn't need to turn. She recognized the voice instantly, soft and steady as a heartbeat, Gabriel's. He stood in her doorway, leaning one shoulder against the frame as if he'd been there for a while, watching her the way he always did. Gently, cautiously, like someone observing a fragile glass that might break if stared at too directly. She didn't look back at him. You shouldn't walk in the rain. You'll get sick. It's only half a block, he said. And I wanted to check on you. Of course he did. Gabriel always checked on her. He brought soup when she was ill, books when she couldn't sleep, silence when she needed company that required no words. And yet sometimes, like tonight, his gentleness felt like a weight pressing on her ribs from the inside, making it hard to draw breath. A soft tap of his shoes on the floorboards told her he'd stepped closer. Not too close. He was always careful with distance. Elena, he said gently, you're shivering. Am I? She lifted her fingers from the railing. They were trembling slightly, but she couldn't tell if it was from cold or something else. The storm is different tonight. Different how? She finally turned, her hair whipping behind her like a dark ribbon in the wind. It feels louder, she said. The words sounded strange even to her. Gabriel's expression warmed into something halfway between a smile and worry. His eyes were the color of wet bark. Steady, grounding, but edged with exhaustion. Maybe you're tired. She wanted to tell him yes, that she was exhausted down to the bone. But before she could answer, he stepped fully onto the balcony. The wind caught the hem of his coat, pulling it sideways, but he didn't seem to notice. Instead, he looked at her in that quiet, searching way he had. You haven't been sleeping, he said softly. She looked away. I'm fine. You always say that. Because it's usually true. But not tonight. She opened her mouth to argue, but another burst of thunder drowned the words before they could form. When the sky finally quieted again, the silence felt heavier. Almost deliberate. Gabriel exhaled long and slow. If something's bothering you, you can tell me. If only it were that simple. She turned back toward the storm. It's nothing. Just a feeling. A feeling about the storm? She hesitated. No, not about the storm. About what storms brought with them. But she didn't say that. I think I'm just restless, she said instead. The air feels. She searched for a word and failed. Sharp, she finished weakly. Gabriel came to stand beside her, leaving a careful foot of space between them. The weather can do that. It's not the weather. His quiet pause stretched long enough that she felt it like a shift in pressure, something tightening in the air. Elena, he said in a low voice, you've been different lately. She kept her gaze fixed on the drowning street below, pretending the pounding rain could drown out the truth pressing against her throat. I'm fine, she repeated. He opened his mouth, probably to say her name again, but instead he inhaled sharply and turned toward the door. Elena, he said quietly, you're not alone in this. Whatever it is. She almost believed him. Almost. A sudden gust of wind slammed the balcony door open the rest of the way, making her jump. Gabriel caught it before it could hit the wall. The storm roared behind them, a wild animal pacing its cage. Gabriel gave her one last look. Something in it made her chest tighten. I'll check on you tomorrow, he said. He hesitated. If you want. She nodded. He closed the door behind him, shutting out the warmth of his presence and leaving her with the storm. She stood there a moment longer, letting the rain's rhythm settle into her bones. But then, a flicker of movement in the street below. She squinted through the downpour. Someone was standing across from her building, still, watching. A darker shape in a darkened world. A chill that had nothing to do with wind crawled up her spine. She blinked, and the figure was gone. The storm swallowed all sound, all shape, all certainty. Elena exhaled slowly, her breath trembling as it left her. Yes, tonight was different. Chapter 2: The Knock. The storm did not ease overnight, it deepened. By the time Elena finally drifted into an uneasy sleep just before dawn, thunder still rattled the window panes like someone testing the strength of the glass. The air smelled of wet concrete and ozone, sharp enough to sting the back of her throat. She dreamt of footsteps in water, of a shadow standing at the foot of her bed, of hands reaching through smoke. When she woke, her pillow was damp, not with sweat, but from the open window she didn't remember leaving ajar. She shut it with a shiver. By late afternoon her apartment felt too small, too silent. The kind of silence that made her pulse drum louder, made her thoughts circle the same dark edges. She tried to read. She tried to cook. She tried to convince herself she hadn't actually seen anyone watching her the night before. The rain pouring down the windows made convincing herself impossible. At dusk, just as the sky bruised into deep purples and murky grays, a knock echoed through the apartment. 3 soft taps. She froze. Not Gabriel's knock. His was always hesitant, polite, as if afraid to intrude. Not the landlord's. He preferred to call her name through the door as if announcing himself made him larger. This knock was quiet, steady, patient. A heartbeat thudded in her ears. Please don't be him, she thought without knowing who him meant. She approached the door, breath hitching with each step. Her fingers brushed the doorknob, cold metal, colder than it should have been. Elena, a voice murmured on the other side. She inhaled sharply. Adrian. She unlocked the door before she had time to think better of it. He stood in the hallway drenched to the bone, rainwater dripping from his hair onto the floor like dark ink spreading across paper. His black shirt clung to him, soaked through, and he looked like he had run through the storm without care for shelter or breath. His eyes, stormy, restless, wounded, lifted to hers. I shouldn't be here, he said. She stepped aside, letting him in before the thought could catch up with her. Adrian moved past her with a tension in his shoulders she hadn't seen before. She shut the door behind him, muffling the roar of the storm until the hallway's dim silence felt too close, too intimate. You're freezing, she said. He didn't answer. His gaze traveled slowly around her apartment, as if cataloging every shadow, every sound, every place someone might hide. Only when he seemed satisfied that they were alone did he turn his attention back to her. Elena, he said again, so quietly it was almost a plea. She swallowed. What happened to you? He ran a trembling hand through his soaked hair, raindrops flicking onto the floor. I needed to see you. That doesn't explain. I saw something last night, he interrupted. She felt her heart drop. What? A man, Adrian said. Watching your building. Her breath stuttered. A thin pulse of cold panic unfurled across her spine, but she forced her expression still. I thought I imagined it. You didn't. His jaw tightened. I followed him. Lost him near the old fountain. Her hands curled into fists. Why didn't you call the police? His laugh was hollow, humorless. You think they'd listen? After what happened 2 years ago? The silence that fell between them had weight. Thick, suffocating. Soaked in memories she couldn't reach no matter how she tried. Adrian, she said softly. Just tell me what you're afraid of. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and the rawness in his eyes made her chest ache. Elena, someone doesn't want you to remember. Her breath caught. Before she could respond, he stepped closer, close enough that she could smell rain on his skin, that she could feel the heat beneath his cold clothes. I shouldn't be here, he whispered again, voice fractured. But every time I try to stay away, something tells me you're not safe. Her pulse fluttered like trapped wings. Why me? She whispered. He closed his eyes as though the answer hurt him. Because I still care, Elena. Even if I shouldn't. The air between them thickened with something dangerous. Fear, need, memory, or all three woven together. Another knock erupted at the door. A heavy one. 2 sharp strikes. Adrian's eyes snapped open, wild. Elena's breath caught in her throat. The storm outside howled, rattling the windows like bones in a jar. Slowly, cautiously, she turned toward the door. The second she touched the knob, the voice on the other side spoke. "Elena? It's me. Gabriel." Adrian's jaw clenched. Elena's stomach dropped. The storm growled. And in that suspended moment, she understood with visceral clarity. Whatever this was, however it started, she was already caught between 2 dangers. One she thought she trusted, and one she thought she feared. She wasn't sure which was worse. Chapter 3: Torn Photograph. Gabriel stood in the doorway like a man braced for a blow. Rain dripped from his coat in slow, heavy drops, pooling at his feet. He wasn't as soaked as Adrian, but close, and unlike Adrian, he didn't seem to notice his own discomfort. His eyes moved past Elena, searching the shadows of her apartment until they landed on Adrian. The air went razor-thin. Adrian stepped slightly in front of her, almost unconsciously, shoulders squared. Gabriel's expression tightened, barely, but the flicker was enough. Elena felt it like a shift in gravity. "What's going on?" Gabriel asked. His voice sounded calm, but the quiet was brittle. "I came to check on her," Adrian said first, surprising her. "After last night." Gabriel's jaw flexed. "I checked on her last night." Adrian's stare sharpened. And yet she was alone when someone was outside her building. Gabriel's eyes snapped to Elena. "You saw someone?" Her pulse hitched. I thought I did," she said. "I wasn't sure." Adrian took a slow breath. He wasn't imagining it. "That's not what I asked you," Gabriel said. Adrian's mouth curved into something cold. "You never asked the right questions." Elena stepped between them before the tension could coil any tighter. "Stop. Both of you." Adrian looked at her first, guilt flickering through him like a weak flame. Gabriel looked at her second, worry settling into the lines of his face as if it had lived there for years. "I'm fine," she said, though the lie tasted sour. Gabriel exhaled. "Elena, may I come in?" She hesitated. Adrian didn't. "She said she's fine," Adrian said. Gabriel's gaze hardened. "I wasn't speaking to you." Another step away from control. Another crack in the restraint Gabriel always wore like armor. Elena felt caught between 2 storms, one wild, one quiet, but both dangerous. Finally, she nodded. "Just don't start anything." Gabriel stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The sound echoed like a seal being pressed into wax. "You shouldn't be here," Gabriel told Adrian. "I could say the same," Adrian replied, but softer. Elena pinched the bridge of her nose. "Can we not do this now? Please." The storm, the knocking, the watching. "I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed, and I just want." Something slid under the door. A faint whisper of paper against the hardwood. Elena's breath stopped. All 3 of them froze. For a beat, the storm surged outside, as if holding its own breath. Adrian moved first, crouching to retrieve the object. He lifted it slowly, carefully, as though expecting it to burn him. It was a photograph. Old. Waterworked. The edges torn. He turned it over, face blanching. "Elena," he said quietly, "you should see this." Gabriel stepped closer, tension humming off him. Elena took the photo with hesitant fingers. It showed her, standing in front of the old fountain in the town square. The image was grainy, taken from a distance, but definitely her. Next to her stood a man. A man whose face had been scratched out with something sharp. Long streaks gouged through the paper, ripping into the photo until only his shoulder and outline remained. Elena felt her stomach twist. She didn't remember this picture. She didn't remember that day. She didn't remember the man at all. But something about the scratch marks, wild, frantic, violent, made her skin tighten. "Where did this come from?" Gabriel asked. Adrian tilted his head. "It was pushed under the door. Just now." "That's impossible," Gabriel said. "No one passed in the hallway, we'd have heard." A loud crack split the apartment. The balcony door had blown open again. Wind whipped the curtains like pale arms flailing. Rain sprayed across the floor. The storm roared in, drowning the room in cold air. Elena's heart hammered. Adrian jumped toward the balcony. Gabriel grabbed her arm, pulling her back from the doorway. Adrian reached the balcony and looked out into the storm. No one there. Just swirling rain and darkness. He turned back, soaked and furious. He's gone. Gabriel's grip on Elena's arm tightened. Who? Adrian opened his mouth, but Elena beat him to it. I think, her voice trembled. I think someone was on the balcony last night. Silence fell like a blade. Then Gabriel looked at her. Really looked, and something in him changed. Not a flicker this time. A shift. A darkening. You should have told me, he whispered. Adrian stepped up beside them, jaw clenched. We need to figure out who this man is. Elena stared down at the torn photograph in her hand. The scratched-out face. The storm. The watcher. The memory she didn't have. A cold certainty slid into her bloodstream. Someone from the night she forgot had returned. And he wanted her to remember. Chapter 4: Dinner with the Ghost. The storm had settled into a steady, relentless downpour by the time Elena met Adrian later that night. He had texted her. Just once, hours after he and Gabriel had nearly torn each other apart in her apartment. Can we talk? Somewhere public. Please. Public. A strange word coming from Adrian, who usually preferred shadows to crowds. She agreed, though every instinct inside her twisted with warning. But she needed answers about the photograph, the watcher, the things she couldn't remember. She chose the Lantern Cafe, a small place tucked off the main street, lit by flickering candles trapped in clouded glass jars. The storm outside made the windows vibrate every so often, like something heavy was throwing itself at the building. Adrian was already there when she arrived, seated in the corner. He looked like a man carved out of exhaustion, eyes dark, hair still damp from the rain, hands clasped tightly on the table as if holding himself together. When he saw her, relief softened his features for a brief moment, so brief she wondered if she imagined it. Elena, he said, standing to pull her chair out before she could stop him. She sat, folding her damp coat over her lap. You said you had something you needed to tell me. Adrian's jaw twitched. I do. But first, are you all right? After earlier. I'm not hurt. That's not what I asked. She looked down, tracing a finger along the grain of the wooden table. I don't know. Everything feels wrong. He nodded slowly, as if he understood too well. A waitress approached, but Adrian waved her off gently. Just water, he murmured. For both of us. Elena frowned. You're not eating? Not yet. He leaned back, exhaling. Elena, you need to know that last night wasn't a coincidence. Her heart thudded. The man watching? Yes. His voice dropped. He's been here before. A chill ghosted up her spine. When? Right before I left town. Adrian's eyes flicked toward the window as thunder rolled. I didn't tell you because you weren't in a place to hear it. What place was that? Adrian didn't answer. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, watching the candle on their table flicker violently with each tremor of the storm. Do you ever feel like someone's standing behind you? He asked quietly. Even when you know you're alone? Elena's breath caught. All the time. He nodded again. He has a way of being there when you least expect it. A way of slipping past noise. Who is he? Adrian hesitated too long. The silence stretched thin enough to snap. Someone from that night, he said finally. The night you don't remember. Elena's pulse spiked. Tell me what happened. His expression folded into pain. Like someone touched a wound that never healed. I can't, he whispered. Not all of it. Not yet. Why? Her voice sharpened without meaning to. Because the truth, he swallowed hard. The truth is going to destroy something. Maybe everything. Her stomach twisted painfully. So instead you want me to stay in the dark? I want you safe. From who? Gabriel thinks. Gabriel doesn't know everything. Adrian cut her off. It wasn't loud, but it was final. He only knows the part he saw. What part did you see? She pressed. His eyes darted downward. Too much. They sat in thick silence, the storm battering the windows like waves beating against rock. Then quietly, cautiously, Adrian reached across the table. His fingertips brushed hers. A small touch barely there. But her breath hitched anyway. Elena, he murmured. I'm trying. You're not telling me anything. I'm telling you the only part one can say without breaking a promise. What promise? To you. A shiver ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the storm outside. She was about to ask him what that meant when the lights overhead flickered once, twice, then died. The cafe fell into darkness, save for the trembling candles. A few people gasped. Someone dropped a glass that shattered on the floor. Adrian reacted instantly, reaching for her hand across the table and gripping it, tight, firm, almost desperate. Elena, he whispered, don't look toward the windows. Her heart slammed into her ribs. Why not? She whispered back. Because he's out there. Her blood froze. You saw him. No, Adrian's voice was barely audible but unwavering. I felt him. She turned her head just a fraction toward the storm-lashed windows. Despite the rain streaking down the glass, a dark shape lingered outside. Unmoving. Watching. Lightning flashed in a brutal white blur. For a split second she saw a man's silhouette, tall, lean, face pressed close to the window's edge. Then the darkness swallowed him again. Elena's breath came out in a sharp, trembling gasp. Adrian squeezed her hand harder. We should go. They rose together. The cafe was filled with murmured panic and scattered candlelight. No one else seemed to have noticed the figure outside. But Elena knew. In her bones, in her memory she didn't have, that he was here for her. As she and Adrian stepped out into the storm, she glanced back at the window. The silhouette was gone. But a single handprint, blurred by rain, remained on the glass. Chapter 5, Gabriel's Warning. Gabriel was already pacing Elena's apartment when she and Adrian entered. One hand pulling through his hair, the other gripping his phone so tightly the plastic casing creaked. He looked up the instant the door opened. His eyes went straight to their joined hands. Adrian dropped Elena's hand immediately, expression unreadable. Gabriel's jaw tightened with something between anger and fear, the kind that eats a man alive from the inside. Elena, Gabriel breathed, crossing the room in 3 long strides. Where were you? I've been calling. My phone died, she said. He stopped in front of her, searching her face for signs of injury. Are you hurt? No. He exhaled shakily, then turned, gaze slicing toward Adrian. You took her out during a blackout? In this storm. She asked me to meet her, Adrian said evenly. Because you filled her head with half-truths. Gabriel stepped forward. Because you always do. Adrian's eyes darkened. Better half-truths than lies. Gabriel lunged, but Elena thrust herself between them. Enough, she snapped. Both of you. Her voice cut through the air like a cracking branch. Gabriel froze, more at the desperation shaking her words than her command. What happened? He asked. Tell me. Elena turned away, pulling in a breath that burned at the edges. There was someone outside the cafe window, she said. Watching. Gabriel stiffened. Did you see him clearly? No. Did he see you clearly? Yes. Gabriel's knuckles went white at his sides. That's it. You're not staying here tonight. Adrian scoffed. You think she's safer with you? She's not safer with you, Gabriel hissed. We both know that. Adrian didn't rise to the bait. That scared her more. What does that mean? Elena whispered. Gabriel hesitated too long. Gabriel, she said, stepping toward him. Tell me. He looked at her with a mixture of grief and resolve, as if he had been holding something back for too many years and it was finally eating through the seams. You remember the night you lost your memory? He asked. Her heart lurched. Pieces. Do you remember the man with the black coat? A sharp pain stabbed behind her eyes. Fleeting, disorienting, gone before she could focus on it. She flinched. Elena. Adrian took a step toward her. She held up a hand. I'm fine. Keep going. Gabriel swallowed. That night, that man wasn't a stranger. Elena's pulse hammered. Then who was he? Someone you knew. His voice was almost a whisper. Someone you trusted. Adrian's head snapped up. Gabriel, don't. Someone you were close to, Gabriel pressed. Gabriel. Adrian's voice sharpened like a blade. Stop. Someone who hurt you, Gabriel said, ignoring him. Someone who. Gabriel, Adrian barked. That's enough. The tone was wrong. Not angry, panicked. Elena looked between them, a sick feeling unfurling in her stomach. What aren't you telling me? She asked. Gabriel's eyes flicked to Adrian, full of accusation. Adrian's eyes flicked to Gabriel, full of warning. Neither spoke. Tell me, she demanded. Instead of answering, Gabriel walked to her bookshelf, to a drawer beneath it she rarely used. He pulled it open, rifled through old papers. His movements looked frantic, desperate. What are you doing? She asked. He found what he was looking for and turned, holding something small between two fingers. A torn strip of photograph. The edges were jagged, matching the tears in the picture from her door. She froze. You didn't give me this, she whispered. I found it in your mailbox 2 weeks ago, Gabriel said. I thought it was a prank. Or a mistake. He held the torn strip beside the photograph Adrian had brought earlier. It aligned perfectly. Together they formed the full left side of the picture. Elena's breath hitched. On the strip Gabriel held, a hand rested on her shoulder in the photo. A man's hand. Long fingers. A thin scar running across the knuckle. A scar she recognized. Her vision blurred for a moment, something clawing its way up from the depths of the night she'd lost. A voice, low, familiar, whispered her name from the edges of memory. Elena. Adrian stepped closer, face pale. What do you remember? She lifted her gaze, staring at the torn photo. I know this hand. Adrian went very still. Gabriel's breath caught. A tremor ran down her spine. I know this scar, she whispered. Another piece of the lost night slid into place, jagged and terrifying. I know him. She looked up. At Adrian. At Gabriel. Both men stared back. Too quiet. Too tense. Too afraid. Elena's breath shook as she asked the question she feared most. Which one of you is he? Chapter 6, The Scar. Silence crashed down, heavy and suffocating. The torn photograph trembled in Elena's fingers. The lamp beside her flickered, throwing unsteady patterns across the hardwood floor. Shadows that stretched and recoiled as though listening. Gabriel was the first to move. He stepped back, palms raised slightly, as if approaching a frightened animal. Elena, listen to me. No, her voice cracked. I asked you both a question. Adrian's breathing had changed, slower, deeper. Controlled. Too controlled. Elena, put the photograph down, he said softly. She clutched it tighter. Why? Because your mind is already overwhelmed, he said. Because you're shaking. Because you don't want me to see what's in it, she snapped. His jaw tightened. No, because I don't want you to collapse again. Gabriel's expression darkened. She wouldn't be collapsing if you hadn't dragged her back into this. Adrian didn't answer. He didn't blink. He only watched her, too still, too focused. Like he was bracing for something. A memory slid through Elena's mind, unbidden, sharp, brief. A flash of a hand gripping her wrist. That same scar. Pulling her out of the rain. Pulling her somewhere dark. She gasped. Gabriel stepped forward. Elena, what did you see? Her head throbbed. A hallway. Wet floor. Someone pulling me. Who? Adrian asked quickly. I didn't see his face. Gabriel moved closer. Was it him? He nodded at Adrian, voice trembling with something that wasn't entirely anger. She opened her mouth. A violent pounding at the door cut through the room like a gunshot. 3 hits. Heavy. Deliberate. All 3 of them spun toward the sound. Elena, Gabriel whispered, grabbing her arm and pulling her behind him. Stay back. Adrian's posture shifted, subtle but unmistakable. His muscles tensed, his stance widened. He looked like a man preparing for a fight. Don't open it, Adrian said. But Gabriel was already moving toward the door. Gabriel, Adrian hissed. He wouldn't knock. That's not his way. Gabriel paused. Another knock, louder now. Faster. Elena, a voice called. Her breath caught. Not the watcher. Not the stranger from the cafe window. Not the man with the scar. She recognized this voice. Mrs. Keene, she whispered. Her elderly neighbor. Gabriel shot Adrian a glare before swinging the door open. Mrs. Keene stood in the hallway, wrapped in a soaked shawl, eyes wide with concern. Elena, dear, The lights went out on the whole block. I saw your apartment was the only one still on. I thought you might have candles. Elena's pulse thrashed in her neck. Gabriel exhaled shakily, stepping back. It's fine. Sorry. We're just on edge. Mrs. Keene smiled faintly at him. Then her gaze flicked to Adrian. Her smile faded. Oh, she murmured. You. Adrian froze. Elena looked sharply between them. You know Adrian? Mrs. Keene's fingers tightened around her shawl. Of course I do. He used to visit you. Nearly every night after everything last year. Gabriel whipped around. What? No, he didn't. Mrs. Keene blinked, startled by the sharpness of his tone. Yes, he did. He would come late. Quietly. Sometimes I'd hear him pacing outside your door. I assumed he was worried. Elena felt the room tilt. Adrian. Her voice was thin, barely holding. Adrian didn't move. Not even his breath seemed to shift. Elena, he said quietly, let me explain. You told me you left town, she whispered. You told me you didn't come back. I didn't want to upset you. Mrs. Keene looked confused. He was here, dear. Often. Gabriel turned on Adrian like a blade swinging toward its target. You lied. Adrian's eyes were locked on Elena, desperation flickering deep beneath the calm exterior. I wasn't here for the reason you think. Elena's throat tightened. Then why were you here? He took one slow step toward her. I was making sure he didn't come back. Her heart stopped. Gabriel stared at him, horrified. You think that justifies stalking her? Adrian's voice cracked, finally raw. I wasn't stalking her. I was protecting her. Elena backed up instinctively. From who? Adrian swallowed hard. And for the first time since he'd returned, he looked afraid. From the man with the scar, he whispered. From the man in the photograph. She stared at him. You don't mean you, she said. He closed his eyes and didn't answer. Gabriel grabbed him by the collar instantly, slamming him into the wall. Say it. Say it isn't you. Adrian didn't fight. He didn't lift a hand. He only looked at Elena, with grief, not guilt, with something darker than fear. Elena, he said quietly, that scar isn't mine. She blinked, looked at his hand. Smooth, unmarked. Not a single line where the scar should have been. Then why? Why had something inside her reacted to him? Then whose is it? She whispered. Adrian exhaled shakily and gave her the answer that would change everything that followed. It belonged to someone we all knew. He looked at Gabriel. A long haunted look. Someone who's supposed to be dead. Chapter 7 The night window splinters. The storm had returned with a vengeance. Rain slashed the streets in sheets. Wind whipped the trees until they groaned under the pressure. Elena sat on the edge of her bed, knees drawn to her chest, the photograph clutched in her hands like a talisman. Every shadow in the apartment seemed alive, moving, watching. She hadn't heard from Gabriel or Adrian since the revelation about the scar. Both had retreated, one with fury, the other with haunted silence. The silence was unbearable. It pressed down on her chest, mingling with the storm until she could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. A sudden crash shattered the fragile quiet. Glass exploded across the room. A sharp, splintering sound that made her scream and scramble backward. The balcony door had shattered. Rain poured in, chilling her to the bone. Wind roared through the gaping hole like a predator. Elena's heart hammered so violently she thought it might rupture in her chest. She looked to the shadows. Nothing moved. Then she saw the footprints. Mud-stained, fresh. Leading from the broken glass toward her bedroom. Elena! Gabriel's voice tore through the storm outside the apartment. He appeared in the doorway, coat dripping, eyes wide with panic. Get back! Adrian was behind him, equally soaked but quieter, controlled, calculating. His eyes darted across the floor. The shattered glass, the footprints. Who is it? Elena whispered, her voice trembling. Gabriel didn't answer. He just stepped forward, shielding her with his body. Adrian crouched, tracing a finger along one of the footprints. Not careful, he muttered. They were sloppy. They want you to see them. Elena swallowed. Why? Who? Someone from that night, Adrian said, voice low and urgent. The one with the scar. Her stomach turned. She wanted to scream, but the words caught in her throat. Gabriel moved closer to the door, peering into the darkness of the balcony. They're still out there, watching. Adrian shook his head. No, they're gone, for now. The apartment shivered as the wind slammed against it. Elena's eyes went to the photograph on the nightstand. The torn edges seemed to mock her now, fragments of a truth she was only beginning to grasp. I know who it is, she whispered. Both men froze. What do you mean? Gabriel demanded. Elena swallowed hard. The hand, the scar. I remember him. Piece, just a piece. Enough to know it's him. The one who attacked me. Adrian's face went pale. Gabriel's jaw tightened. Then we need to leave, Adrian said. Now. Before he comes back. Where? She asked, panic rising. Where do we go? Gabriel turned to her, his expression hard, sharp as the edge of a knife. Somewhere safe. Anywhere but here. I won't let him take you again. The wind howled, shaking the broken balcony door. Elena felt the cold rain seep through her clothes. She wanted to move, wanted to obey, but a part of her hesitated, pulled toward the danger she didn't fully understand. Wait, she said. Before we go, we need to know what we're dealing with. Who is he? What does he want? Gabriel's eyes flicked to Adrian. Adrian's gaze returned, tense, unreadable. Elena, Adrian said quietly, you don't want to know everything yet. Some truths are too dangerous. She shook her head. I need to know. The three of them stood there, rain pouring in, storm pressing against the windows, and the apartment seemed to shrink around them. Then another crash. A shadow flitted across the broken balcony. Elena screamed, and in that instant she realized. The storm outside wasn't the only thing threatening to tear her world apart. The real danger was already inside. Chapter 8, Ghost Town. The storm had passed, leaving streets slick with rain and littered with the debris of a night the town would never forget. Elena walked beside Gabriel, her coat still damp, her hair plastered to her neck. The city smelled of wet asphalt and something more. Something metallic like iron and fear. Adrian walked a few steps behind them, silent, his presence both protective and suffocating. Elena could feel the tension between the two men like a physical weight pressing at her shoulders. Neither spoke, but the energy between them crackled in a way that made her stomach twist. She kept her eyes on the cracked pavement. Footsteps echoed softly, bouncing off walls and alleyways. The town felt smaller, darker, unfamiliar, as if the storm had rewritten the shape of reality itself. Where are we going? She finally asked. Gabriel didn't answer immediately. His gaze swept the empty street, sharp, wary. Somewhere I know is safe, he said finally. Elena's fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. Safe. The word tasted hollow. Adrian's voice broke the silence. Safe isn't a place anymore. She shot him a glance. His expression was pale, drawn tight with something she couldn't read. Not anger. Not fear. Something worse, desperation. Do you mean him? She whispered. He didn't answer. Gabriel's hand brushed her shoulder, lightly, almost apologetically, but the pressure was enough to anchor her in the chaos. We need information, he said. Before anyone else comes after you. Elena nodded, though a part of her resisted. She felt like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Strings controlled by people she should trust but couldn't. The streets were quiet, almost eerily so. Most windows were shuttered, lights out, leaving only the reflections of street lamps on the wet asphalt. For a moment Elena felt the sensation again, the same she'd felt at the cafe, the sense that someone was watching. Stop, she whispered. What? Gabriel asked. That feeling. The one I keep having. Someone is here. Adrian's eyes darted to a darkened alley. It's not just a feeling, he muttered. Gabriel's jaw clenched. It's him. Or someone working for him. Elena swallowed. But why? Why come now? Gabriel exhaled slowly. Because you remember pieces now. Pieces he doesn't want you to have. She felt her chest tighten. What pieces? Adrian spoke for the first time in minutes. His voice was quiet but heavy. The night you don't remember. Everything that happened before the hospital. Her stomach sank. She had been trying to push it away for weeks. These fragments, fleeting flashes of pain and fear. But now she realized they were coming back whether she wanted them or not. Gabriel stopped in the middle of the street, pulling her with him. There's a place I know. Someone who saw that night. Someone who can tell us something. Elena's pulse quickened. Are you sure it's safe? He didn't answer. Only motioned her forward. They turned a corner, walking into a narrow street that had somehow survived the storm relatively unscathed. The streetlights flickered like dying stars, casting long shadows that seemed to reach for her. Adrian slowed behind them, gaze sweeping the alleys. We're not alone, he said. Her breath caught. I told you stop. No, he said firmly. I can feel it. Someone is following us. Elena's pulse raced. Her heartbeat was a drum echoing in her ears. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she stayed. Between the two men, between the shadows, she felt trapped in a web she couldn't escape. A figure slipped behind a corner ahead. Quick. Light. Too precise to be random. Gabriel froze. Adrian's hands tensed at his sides. Elena's stomach dropped. It's him, she whispered. Gabriel shook his head. We don't know. Could be someone else. But we need to move faster. The three of them hurried forward, feet splashing in puddles. Every step felt like walking deeper into the unknown. Every shadow a potential threat. She glanced at Adrian. His eyes were fixed on the darkness behind them. Something flickered in his gaze. A memory, a warning, or a fear he refused to share. Gabriel gripped her arm. Stay close. Elena nodded, swallowing hard. The town was quiet. Too quiet. And in the empty streets, the storm had left behind more than water. It had left the echo of something dark, patient, and waiting. She realized with a shiver. No one here was going to be safe tonight. Chapter 9. Adrian's fracture. The rain had stopped, leaving a heavy, suffocating humidity that clung to the streets like a second skin. Elena followed Adrian through narrow alleyways, her steps echoing softly against wet stone. Gabriel was ahead, alert, scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement, but it was Adrian who drew her attention. He seemed different. She noticed it the moment he thought she wasn't looking. A slight tremor in his hands, a restless energy coiling beneath his calm exterior. He was holding himself together, but only barely, like a man who had been running in the dark for years. Elena, he said quietly, breaking the silence. I need to tell you something. She glanced at him. What is it? He shook his head, trying to laugh, but it came out as a dry, brittle sound. I'm not myself. Not anymore. Not since that night. You mean the night I don't remember? Her voice faltered. Even saying it aloud made her stomach twist. Yes. He took a deep breath, as if trying to anchor himself. I thought I could leave it behind. I thought I could keep you safe and move on. But I was wrong. Elena's pulse quickened. What happened? Adrian's eyes flicked to the ground. He paused, swallowing hard. I hurt someone. That night. I didn't mean to. I thought it was necessary. Thought I was protecting you. Her hands went cold. What do you mean hurt someone? His gaze lifted, dark and haunted. I fought him. The man with the scar. I don't know if he's still alive. Elena stepped back instinctively. You what? Adrian's lips pressed into a thin line. I did what I had to do. But it's eating me alive. Every day. And now he's back. Gabriel, walking a few paces ahead, tensed. His jaw flexed. He didn't speak, but Elena could feel the silent warning radiating from him. Adrian ran a hand through his damp hair. I've been seeing him, feeling him, even when he's not there. I can't trust myself. I don't know what I'll do if he comes close again. Her stomach churned. You're scaring me. I know, he whispered, voice barely audible. I don't want to scare you, but I need you to understand. I'm dangerous now. Not just him. Elena's heart pounded. She realized something she hadn't faced before. Adrian's presence, which once felt like safety, now carried a shadow, a sense of imminent risk. Gabriel finally turned to them, voice low but sharp. Adrian, enough. Stop confessing your fears and start thinking. We need a plan. You can't be honest about your panic. Elena can't be left alone, and that man, he's not waiting politely. He's hunting. Adrian's shoulders slumped. I know. I can't help but see him in every shadow. hear him in every silence. Elena reached out, brushing a hand over his arm. Then we deal with it together. Whatever it is. He looked at her, a fragile glimmer of relief passing across his face, quickly replaced by guilt. I should have never come back, he whispered. I should have stayed away. Maybe then you wouldn't be in this mess at all. Gabriel's voice cut through the tension, firm and unyielding. No, this isn't your fault. And leaving her alone would have been worse. Elena swallowed, trying to steady the tremor in her chest. She wanted to believe him, but every instinct, every shadow, every flicker of memory told her that danger wasn't just outside. It was already inside, threading between the three of them. The street ahead was empty, silent, but the feeling of eyes watching them persisted. Adrian's pace quickened, restless. His hands fidgeted with the hem of his jacket. Every so often, he glanced over his shoulder, as if expecting the past to step out of the darkness and grab him. Elena, he said, voice breaking, promise me something. What? Promise me. No matter what happens, you'll survive. Even if I can't protect you. She nodded, though her chest ached. I promise. He exhaled a shaky, defeated sound. For a moment he looked almost like himself again. But the shadow in his eyes, the fracture she had glimpsed, would not leave. And neither would the man with the scar. Chapter 10 Safe House, Unsafe Hearts. Gabriel's apartment smelled of damp leather and old books, a faint trace of antiseptic lingering in the corners. He moved quickly, methodically, shutting the door behind them with a click that seemed louder than necessary. Outside, the storm had returned, rain hammering against the windows with furious insistence. Elena, sit, Gabriel commanded, pointing to a chair near the fireplace. His voice was sharp, controlled, leaving no room for argument. Adrian stayed by the doorway, leaning against the frame, arms crossed. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes betrayed tension, suspicion, and something darker. Something Elena didn't want to name. She perched on the edge of the chair, feeling the taut pull between the two men like a wire ready to snap. The torn photograph lay on the table in front of her, a reminder of everything she didn't remember and everything they weren't telling her. Gabriel crouched in front of her, placing his hands on the table. Elena, he said, voice low but intense, we don't have time. He's not waiting. He's coming for you, and he's patient. Who is he? Elena asked, though her voice was small, shaky. I need to know. Gabriel's jaw tightened. The man with the scar. He's dangerous in ways you can't understand yet. He wants something from you. Something he believes belongs to him. Adrian shifted, finally speaking. Gabriel, we don't even know what he wants. All you're doing is scaring her. Gabriel's eyes snapped to Adrian. I'm scaring her because she's alive. You think that's easy? Elena flinched. The intensity in Gabriel's gaze made her chest ache. There was a hunger there, something obsessive, protective, and terrifying. She understood suddenly that the man who had always seemed like her guardian could also become her jailer if pushed. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. You're both acting like children. The only thing we know is that someone is targeting her. That's it. We don't need to tear each other apart in the middle of it. Gabriel leaned back, tense, but didn't argue. Instead, he stared at her. Elena, I need to know you trust me. No games. If he comes, if he finds you, you have to stay with me. Not Adrian. Not anyone else. Her pulse hammered. She could feel Adrian's gaze on her, heavy, accusing. I don't know if I can, she whispered. Adrian stepped closer, dangerously calm. You will if you want to survive. But remember, Gabriel isn't the only one who's trying to keep you alive. Don't forget that. Gabriel's hands clenched on the edge of the table. I will do whatever it takes, he said, teeth grinding. Even if you hate me for it later. The air grew heavier, almost suffocating. Elena could feel the tension coiling around her like a living thing. Two men. Two protectors. Two dangers. Both claiming her trust, both willing to fight for it, and neither willing to step aside. The fire crackled in the hearth, tiny sparks leaping like embers into the gloom. Rain pelted the windows, hammering out a rhythm that made the room feel smaller, more enclosed. Adrian's voice broke the silence. Elena, you need to see something. It might help you understand. He reached into his coat and produced a small water-stained notebook. Elena hesitated, but Gabriel gave a sharp nod, as if granting permission. She opened the notebook. Inside were scrawled notes, dates, and fragments of names she barely recognized. Drawings, 2 maps of streets, sketches of buildings, even the fountain in the photograph. Her hands shook. This is all about me? Adrian nodded. It's everything I could gather after that night. Every place he might come. Every move he might make. I've been watching, waiting. Gabriel cut him off. Waiting to do what? You've been following her. Adrian, how is that helping her? She's been in danger, Adrian said, voice low, edged with frustration. I've been trying to protect her. From him. From all of this. Elena felt dizzy. Conflicting loyalties twisted inside her chest like barbed wire. One man promised her survival. The other confessed he could barely control himself, that he had fractured in ways she couldn't comprehend. Her eyes went back to the notebook. A small note written in a shaky hand caught her attention. He remembers. She remembers. The scar never lies. Her breath caught. She looked up at Adrian. What does this mean? He didn't answer. Only stared at her, haunted, broken, and somehow still alive. Gabriel's hand brushed hers, lightly, almost imperceptibly, but the gesture was enough to anchor her, to remind her that the danger was real, but so was his obsession. The storm outside intensified. Lightning flashed, illuminating the room in stark, unnatural white. Shadows leaped across the walls, twisting and shifting like they had a life of their own. Elena realized with a sinking certainty that she was trapped between 2 men, 2 protectors, 2 dangers, and the man with the scar was still out there, waiting, watching.